we said thank you so much for tackling this conversation and being here to support it. I can't wait to see all that we learn together and brainstorm together. So thank you guys for being here. And thanks everybody else too.
Yes, thank you very much. I know, like we were just saying, that probably some people will be filtering in after 4 o'clock, but because it is 4, I wanted to start on time. You know, we'll probably be admitting people here shortly as well. We did ask for questions before. I'm putting this in the chat. Hang on just a second. So we asked people when they signed up for this if they had any questions so that I could pass those along to both Ashley and Erin, who I will introduce in just a moment. So we got a lot of questions that came in, and Ashley and Erin jumped right into the document and started answering right away, which is amazing. And it'll be a very helpful resource to come back to. So if you're watching the recording at a later time, this will be linked as well. But for those of you that are here, you're welcome to see what questions were asked. And then I will pass it over to both Erin and Ashley to kind of start this conversation. But again, so quick introduction. My name is Molly Holloman. I am serving as the school library education consultant for DPI. And what we're hearing a lot of on our team right now is everything is about the SIS, because we have a new SIS this year. And one of the things that, you know, some people are in phase 1 and some people are starting phase 2. So there's a lot of questions that are floating around. And one of those big questions has been, how does this affect me as a school librarian? And so with that said, I had been thinking about it, and I will be very honest and say I did not use PowerSchool very much when it was our SIS in my home district of Dare County. Unless I was looking up an email address or something to reach out to a parent, I was very, very limited in my access to it. And so up until recently, I have not learned so much about Infinite Campus. And so as my ears have been open and just be trying to listen to, you know, what's going on and what are things being asked and what are we learning about, I happened to attend a webinar and Ashley was hosting it. And so Ashley is one of our new NCSIS ambassadors. She has served with NC Bold, and I will have her introduce herself in just a moment. But I was so excited to hear a librarian teaching other teachers and educators and administrators about all the ins and outs and things she had learned so far in Infinite Campus. And another person that I was hearing a lot of from in some different virtual settings was Erin Bradley. And so she was willing to also lend her voice to this, because there was a lot of times I was hearing Erin say, has anybody else had, or has anybody else tried, or hey, if this happens, here's what I figured out. And so like most librarians, Erin was willing to kind of just figure things out. And I think that's a big part of this too with us as librarians. We get asked to help a lot, even when it doesn't necessarily feel like it's in our zone. But I know in Erin's world it is. So with all of that said, I'm just really grateful that these two leaders are willing to share with you a little bit about what they've learned so far about Infinite Campus. Again, Ashley's coming from a school lens, so she works in Craven County. And then Erin's bringing a little bit more of a district lens, and she is coming to us from Orange County. So I'm very grateful to both of you. And as I have been saying all along, there's a lot I'm here to learn as well. There's very few questions that were asked that I would know how to answer. So I'm a very eager learner in this group as well. So if you're joining us right now and you want to hop in the chat and tell us if you're using Infinite Campus, and if so, where are you using it? And if you are not yet using it and you're just here to listen, that is wonderful as well. But I want to greet you, and if you want to use the chat, that's great. And if you're just here to listen, that's perfectly fine too. I'll put in the chat as well. We had some questions that came in when people were signing up for this. So that is in a document where both Ashley and Erin have addressed many of those questions so far. So that is the extent of talking that I think I have at this point. Ashley or Erin, have you decided, if either of you feel comfortable with where you want to start? No.
Wherever is great. We can start wherever. So I'm Ashley Filling Game. As Molly said, I'm in Craven County at a small rural school. I decided to dip my foot into Infinite Campus over the summer and spring of last school year, helping with NC Bold, and just wanted to kind of know what was happening. So when my teachers inevitably came and asked me questions about Infinite Campus, I would have some kind of idea what they were talking about. So really, we answered the questions most of you had. You know what you had access to in Power School previously. So step one is kind of determining who your Infinite Campus person is, either be it your data manager, if you have somebody in your district. For example, we have a head person and we have SLMC meetings and PLCs. Sarah Emmerich, and we can reach out to her. So at one of our first meetings, we said, hey, we can't look up anything. We got nothing. So how are we supposed to know UIDs? How are we supposed to get birthdays for morning announcements? How are we supposed to help get you just everything, guys? You know that. And so we were given access to different parts of Infinite Campus that we felt were necessary for us to complete our job. So step one is kind of figuring out what you have access to. If you have students assigned to you because you give grades or you have courses assigned to you, you'll have access more like a teacher. And if that's the case, a lot of the links I put on the bottom of the Q&A document, especially the manual, will give you a lot of how-to information from the teacher perspective. The biggest thing to remember is if you don't have classes, so like myself, I don't have classes, my Infinite Campus looks a lot different than a teacher. I kind of had essentially administration rights, and I can do a lot of things, which is great and overwhelming. We were going to take today to kind of Q&A and talk, not so much sandbox and get into Infinite Campus because it can be overwhelming if you're not using it yet. But once you actually do start using it, it really is, Aaron said it best, it really is intuitive and you can find what you're looking for. Even when you go to print reports, I was like, I don't know how to print a birthday list, but I went into a data viewer, I clicked around, there's a search bar, I typed birth date, and lo and behold, you can make a birthday list. And it was really that easy, but it's kind of the fear of, I don't like having all these rights in there. And if I click this, does it delete this? And kind of, that worry. So we want to kind of answer your questions, ease your minds, and just be here to help support you. Molly also said that part of this is for garnering the questions that you have that we may not have answers to, but that DPI and other people realize, okay, our SLMCs want to know XYZ, we've got to get that information disseminated and out to them. So it's also, that's the purpose of today too. And just remembering your PSU, your district, they can choose to make Infinite Campus as infinite as they want, or not. And so it is kind of annoying, I know, to hear, well, it's up to your county what you're going to do. But it really is. One of the questions somebody asked, I'll just go ahead and address. They wanted to know, where can I easily find the AUP information? What kid can have their picture in the directory? Well, for my county, we did not worry about getting that streamlined into Infinite Campus. We sent home paper pencil for parents to fill out. The teachers have that. We've made a spreadsheet ourselves that documents all that, and that's how we access that at this time. That doesn't mean Infinite Campus can't do it. It just means my PSU has chosen right now that that's not our number one focus for what we're using it for. And I think Aaron's district was similar in their decision. Is that correct, Aaron?
Yeah, and I come from a different lens at the district level. I was also on our district's implementation team. So I have done hundreds of hours of video training with Infinite Campus and meetings, and I've made all the mistakes that can be made thus far, and I'm sure I'll make more. But yeah, we decided what we wanted to do was roll out the things that we needed to in order to start school. And the AUP just wasn't one of those, like, we could do that on paper, but that wasn't important. What we thought was most important was scheduling the children, making sure that we could contact families and that we could take attendance and do grades. Those were our four focus areas.
So in looking at the Q&A, a lot of people wanted to know what was happening with what other platforms can sync and what digital tools. And so if your district uses something for one sign-on like Clever ClassLink, but even if you use Canvas, Google Drive, Google Classroom, Educator's Handbook, pretty much the way we were taught when we were learning all about Infinite Campus from them is that there's no, they use the word infinite for a reason. It really can connect to all kinds of third-party apps. Again, it's up to your PSU which ones they've decided that they're going to do. And then that kind of leads into the questions people had about how is it working in regards with Destiny? How's that information being pulled? Are you able to run reports and successfully sync? We've had some growing pains and some troubleshooting with Destiny and Infinite Campus here. Our kids weren't populating correctly. There was some back channel stuff that is way above me in the IT world that they had to do to make that happen, but our IT department was on it. And again, after they got the major things done, kids in classes, attendance, enrollment, now they're working on getting our homerooms situated and things like that on Destiny. But those things do all talk back and forth. If there's a specific app or program you're curious about, that would be a question for you to direct to the people who are rolling out Infinite Campus. Either if you have leaders at each school, if you have a team, a rollout team, a contact person, so maybe go to your principal and they can contact that person to find out if that app is currently going to talk with Infinite Campus, and if not, kind of plead your case on, but I really need XYZ to communicate with Infinite Campus. I know for our early colleges and high schools, Canvas was a big thing. They wanted their grades to be able to pass back and forth with Infinite Campus. So there were some things we had to show them to make that happen, but now that happens. So it's the same for us in the media coordinator world as well.
And I will say there are a couple of ways to do some of your connections. So that is actually part of my job, which is hilarious because I don't have an IT background. I have a library background. I taught English. I was a librarian. And I have been responsible for integrating all of these platforms with our Infinite Campus instance. And the easiest one was Destiny. But I will tell you one of the reasons it was easiest. We already we did not have a direct link from PowerSchool to Destiny. We had a nightly pull and sent our information to an SFTP and had it mapped. So all I had to do was recreate it in Infinite Campus. I knew where to send it. I had to call Follett, and they helped me remap a couple of the columns that I needed to remap, and I had it working before. So we have a year-round school that started July 15th. We got access to our program July 8th, and Destiny was up and running July 8th. So when they started school day one, they could check books out. So that was by far the easiest integration I did of all of the programs. So if nothing else, no, it can be done, and you can do it ahead of time, and it should be ready to go.
I think that's so good to hear, because I think that's what a lot of the concern was that I was hearing from librarians over the summer that were in phase one was like, are we going to be able to check out books? Like, is that going to be able to? And so it's really good to hear. And I knew that from you over the summer that you had figured that out pretty quickly. But to know that you've worked with a lot of integrations and to know that that's one of the smoothest ones, if not the smoothest one, is probably really good for librarians to hear if they're not in phase one. Yeah. And I know that's one of those things too. With the PowerSchool, like the overnight syncs, right? Like there's a lot of issues that can bubble up from that. So it's good to hear that there's a little bit more of a clean sync between those things. So
yeah, and even though ours, oh, sorry, go ahead.
You go first.
I was going to say, even though ours was not smooth, I will say we still could check out books. The only issue we had was with the mapping. There was a miscommunication and we didn't know homeroom wasn't labeled somewhere. So all of our kids were there and dropped in, and we could still check out books. It just wasn't that convenient. Click the homeroom tab, find your picture on the, screen type of thing. So even if it is hairy at first, it will still let you check out books too.
And I will say, I added on the Q&A the fields that I pulled for my SFTP, and you will notice that we do not pull homeroom. That is a very intentional choice on our part, because when I finally wrangled away Destiny admin rights from my IT department before I was in the IT department, when I was in the library, there were thousands of homerooms, thousands. Do y'all know how you get rid of homerooms? That would be one homeroom at a time. So, and you know how it is, right? Like if your mapping's wrong and it creates all those homerooms, you have to go delete them one at a time. So I decided it would be better for me not to sync that every night. And I just pulled that information and uploaded it separately. It is very easy to do. And then I just told my librarians, all they have to do now is just add a kid. If a kid comes in, they just add them to the homeroom. I can upload it again if I want to. I have not done that, but it is possible. So that's certainly, even when we were with Power School, we did not sync the homeroom because of the issue of having all those homerooms created that we had to delete.
I appreciate you just taking a few minutes to explain that too, because I think there's a lot of people who wonder why without knowing everything that you just said, that it can get really messy, and that to be able to go in, that just, and those of us working within Destiny know that a messy catalog can be very frustrating. And so to know that this is one layer of it that you're able to kind of make a little less frustrating, it's just good to have that whole picture. So thank you for explaining that, Erin. And I'll add too, I know you probably both have new avenues to take us down, but one thing I wanted to mention for the people who are watching the recording and can't see the chat, Heather mentioned too that Mark Sandberg, who is in our IT department at DPI, has said specifically that Destiny should be syncing up. If you're in phase 1, there shouldn't be any issues with that. And if there is, to reach out to your tech team, ask them to get in touch with Mark Sandberg specifically, because we do have some resources, and that's also linked. That very first question is a GitHub for vendors, and Mark sent us that. So I made sure to include that. So I just wanted to put that out there in the recording as well, that if you're having issues and you're in phase 1 at this point with Destiny, Mark Sandberg, have your tech team reach out. All right, Ashley, Erin, what do you think we need to address next?
Well, I do see in the chat that somebody was asking about the incident IQ again. I'm not familiar with incident IQ, so I cannot tell you anything about that. I'm not even sure what that is. But I see that, Natasha, that you are from Cumberland County Schools, and you have an NC-SIS ambassador in your county as well, Katrina Finch, who is a school library media coordinator also. So she may be a person that you could reach out to with what the expectation from Cumberland County Schools is, but then maybe more about that incident IQ. But I myself personally am not familiar with that, so I apologize.
So, and I do know what incident IQ is. I have looked into it, but we don't use it in our district. But based upon my knowledge of what it is and my knowledge of how to integrate programs, I would suspect that would not be a problem to integrate them. I don't know that anybody's done it yet, but I don't see that being some significant hurdle more than any of the other programs we've been integrating.
Perfect. Thank you.
I just want to learn how to navigate. So I will say one of the things, I have some suggestions. Okay, so I was on the implementation team, so I have been dealing with everyone in my district. People who are successful and comfortable with Infinite Campus took time to watch some of the training videos that they suggest that you watch. And those who didn't, they're still a little bit lost. So I would suggest that you definitely watch some of those videos, even though some of them are brutally boring. They are thorough, they are accurate, they are informative. So I would highly suggest that. If you know there are certain things that you relied upon in PowerSchool, I would document that and share that with whomever your implementation team is for your district, because we asked people to do that in our district because we could pre-build the reports that they needed, because they certainly didn't all come ready to go. And so the folks who did that for us, the minute we had access, we built the report for them, and we were able to share it very quickly. Other folks are now asking us for reports that we don't know necessarily how to build, and more importantly, we don't necessarily have time to build very quickly for them. Whereas as we were learning, it was a great way to learn. So if you know, I'm going to need a birthday list, I'm going to need this, go ahead and let that implementation team know. And that way they can try and use that as part of their learning, and you will benefit by having the stuff that you need ready to go. So that would be my other suggestion that I make to you. And then just if you want to pass on some suggestions to your district, we made an Infinite Campus intranet that was just ours. And we have still a document just kind of like this one where people can ask questions and we answer them. And it's just sort of an ongoing one that all of our staff can see. And we also are linking, like every time we make a how-to guide for something, we link it in there and let them know, hey, this is how you print a roster if you're not a teacher. This is how you sync your grade book to Canvas, things like that. So I would suggest that. The last thing I would say is if you are somebody who used PowerSchool significantly, or at least enough that you felt pretty comfortable with it, it is very similar in Infinite Campus in terms of, in the upper right is where you change school years in schools. In the upper left is where you have your menus. So like things make logical sense. They are in the same location. I actually think Infinite Campus is easier to read in some places, and it is more difficult to read in other places. It just kind of depends. But overall, I find it fairly easy to navigate. And I think if you were pretty confident in your PowerSchool skills, it will not take you long to convert your skills to Infinite Campus. It's not, especially as a librarian. Like I think if you're a data manager, there's a lot more to learn about Infinite Campus than if you are using it, as a librarian in your school. So. I'm trying to look.
Nope, that was perfect. I was sitting there writing them down on the bottom because I think those need to move to the top. So thank you for addressing that. And also Heather put in the chat, and I've linked it up here as well, for a really great professional development website from our NCSIS team. So that link will also live in our Q&A doc.
And I would say when our NCSIS team offers chances for you to take courses, join webinars, I would do it. They all know me now. They probably all are like, oh, it's her again. But they've been great. Like, I ask a question, they go try to find the answer, right? Yeah. Or we try to figure it out together. And they don't have the answers to everything. They are learning this integration just like we are. So, but they're more than willing to help and ask and check into things and work with us. So certainly when they start offering those, I would jump on the opportunity to listen in or participate, whatever it is that they're offering, because they really are working very hard to try and communicate all of this information out.
Well, exactly like you said, Erin, about your own district implementation team, it's the same thing here, right? So unless you're asking those questions, how does that team know what questions there are and what things might not have been addressed yet, and instead of just taking a guess at what people want to learn, it's a great way to say this is what people need. So again, this first session, this was really, I called it FYI on purpose. Ashley and Erin were willing to jump in without a whole lot of structure and just have questions. And we didn't want it to be like a step-by-step, here's what you need to know, because everybody is coming at this, what SLMCs see in their own SIS is different PSU by PSU. And there's a lot that you might not need access to. And so I think this is really just one of those overview things. But if you end up having some bigger questions, some things that you would like to see, please let us know. And we'll make sure that we kind of adjust some trainings in the future about really specific things. So as you are learning Infinite Campus and as you are exploring different things and have questions, let us know if there's like specific training we haven't covered yet. So Ashley, anything pop into your head right now?
No, I've looked at the Q&A and I think a lot of it, with printing like the birthday list, the rosters, Aaron's suggestion, especially if you're a phase 2 school, I don't know if anybody in here is, getting them to go ahead and run you the report that would do the birthday list. I know our district went ahead and got like all the staff UIDs pulled for us in one document. So when we needed those for assigning things, we could do that easily versus having to pull the roster ourselves. They were able to do that. So any of those things you would need ahead of time. Being able to access your roster, we have some steps for how to on doing that because rosters do change frequently. And I know you need those for lots of reasons. I know specifically somebody had mentioned when they were maybe pulling the rosters, it had a lot of other information they didn't need. Depending on if your PSU gives you access or not, what's really nice is when you're making a report, there's lots of choices, which is overwhelming. But then at the same time, when you're looking for something specific, there's a search bar that you can put in. You can put the filters that you want. You can delete columns you don't need. So maybe you just want students' first names, last names on a document and their birth date, and you don't want to know their UID and all that on this paper. You can do that, and then you can sort, accordingly. Same with printing the rosters. You have the option to go in and only print homeroom. I know something that we were overwhelmed with, myself and some other SLMCs, is when we went to print rosters, they're rostered for every course. So I'm in an elementary school. So they have a homeroom roster, a lunch roster, a recess roster, a PE. I don't need all those rosters, I just need one list of all the kids' names, first and last, so that I can help them with different things and have them in case of an emergency, with my bag if I have to go outside for fire drill. And so we tried to put that in the notes of how to do that and how you can remove that data that you don't need for that. So you have access again. I know it's cheesy and I've already said it, but it's infinite. So you can have all this stuff on a printed roster. But then you can also dwindle it down to exactly what you need. I was going to read the chat. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just reading it too. So I did not see a learning plan in the campus community specifically for media specialists. I suspect because, and I haven't asked my media specialist in my district too many questions about this, but my gut is it hasn't really changed their lives very much, right? Like Destiny's working, Destiny's what they use every day. Like if they're doing their job the way they want to do their job and the way we hope they're doing their jobs, they aren't spending a lot of time in whatever student information system we have. So I don't know that it's really rocked their boats as much as, maybe people in other roles like principals and data managers and things like that, which is probably a good thing, right?
Yeah, it's probably a really good thing for people to hear because there's a lot of people that signed up for this, again, knowing we have several of them here live, but then, people signed up but wasn't not able to be here. But I think there's this fear of what am I missing out? What do I not know? What should I know that I don't know? And I think what both of you are saying is, for the most part, you don't need to be stressed out about it. And you don't need to feel like you're going to have to jump through a bunch of hoops because it is intuitive. And it affects our work, but not to the same extreme as, like you said, administration or classroom teacher trying to figure out grade books, those kinds of things.
And if anybody's in phase 2, you will have all of the benefit of those of us who jumped into phase 1, because we will have worked out the kinks. I mean, I'm more than happy if your district is phase 2 and you're having trouble with Destiny, shoot me an email and say, we can't get it connected, because I could probably do that in my sleep at this point. So, that's a benefit, right? Like yes. The benefit of being in phase 2 is learning from phase 1.
Yes. Absolutely. So one thing I was going to point out too, and I know it's been mentioned, but we were kind of intentional. Ashley and I were chatting about this at the very beginning, and then Aaron hopped in and agreed that we're not showing it to you only to just not overwhelm, because there are some things that you might want to see in terms of those reports. But Ashley went in and changed or created some videos like step by step exactly how you would see it here. So that's why we're not showing it here. But if there's something that you were hoping to see in that question and answer document towards the bottom, there's some links and information, including some of those things like how to create a roster, how to exactly like somebody asked, how do I make a birthday list? So there's some helpful things in there for you. Aaron, Ashley, I was going to open this up to people who are here if they have any questions to ask you. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we do that? Okay.
Whatever they want to ask.
Okay, so I know we have some things in the chat. Feel free to use that, but if anybody wants to unmute and ask any questions, that's what we're here for. And if not, that's okay too. We didn't want to drag it on, but we also just wanted to start the conversation and have you feel, somewhat relieved by the fact that people have been through this and have come out the other side still able to check out books and find out their kids' names and last names and what class they're supposed to be with. And Ashley's example is exactly what popped in my head. I was going, I just need that list for whenever there's a special event or a fire drill, and I need to have a list with me that's about as current as possible. So, that's kind of how it affects us.
I will say one of the quirks of Infinite Campus, and I don't know if this is a temporary quirk because we were coming from a different student information system, or if this is going to be life every summer, but none of our students were active, which for example, when I needed to build my Destiny export, I needed to choose active students, right? Because I don't export kids who are gone, or I'd be exporting 25,000 kids. And so I had to build my report, and one of the fields is called active today. And so my report would say active today true, except I couldn't make it true until school started because all of the kids were inactive until they showed up for school and school started. So that was an odd, and we have a year-round school. So I had to make two different reports for a little while. I think that's a weird quirk. I've asked about it. It does kind of sound like maybe that's going to be true every summer, that the kids are inactive during the summer months in there. But I think once they're in the system, it's not as much of a problem. But our kids were just being rolled in for the first time. So there was a little tweaking that had to be done for that.
That's a good example. Thank you, Aaron. It looks like a couple people are chatting, but it's not popped up quite yet. But I will put a plug in too and say, along with the videos that Ashley put, like the tutorials in our document here, I do recommend, if any of you have not watched any of the webinars that have already happened, that's a really great way to learn too. Just hearing and seeing, and again, like Ashley, the one that I went to with her, I wasn't using a grade book. That did not have anything to do with me, but it was helpful just to see some of the screens and to hear what questions people had. And so that would be another great thing to use as a learning resource too, is just to watch some of those webinars that have already happened. So, and Heather addressed that in the chat, what Aaron was just talking about, that was one of the bumps in the road. Hopefully it has been a workaround was shared with some of the SIS coordinators. So hopefully that will not be the case like you experienced, but it's just another good story of being like, we learned things and we kind of push on. Do you see Amanda's question in the chat is grade pass back? You mentioned issues with Canvas. Can you share a workaround because they're having issues with honors classes?
So I don't know that so one of the characteristics of the grade passback between Canvas and Infinite Campus is there's a set of rules that you have to follow. And if you don't follow them, then your grade won't pass back. So that includes if you have differentiated assignments, if you have different due dates. There were a few of them. And so I had to, and I didn't realize it. So I failed to like front load that information to our teachers because I didn't realize it. I just missed that in the wealth of information that I had. And so when I did, I had to start sharing that. Like, you know what, the reason it's not passing back and will never pass back is because of this. So there may be a few times where teachers cannot pass something and they just have to go put it in Infinite Campus itself. I will say, I think Canvas has been very responsive to trying to fix any issues that we've had. So there, I would probably reach out to them as well, but all of the grade passback issues that we have had in our district have been because the assignment did not meet those requirements.
Thank you, Erin.
And
All
then
right.
the only, I was
ahead.
just gonna say, the only other issues that we had is making sure that the categories and things were named the same thing. So they had to be named the same. And then for it to go back correctly, like going back and forth, that one roster must be in the latest version. That was another issue that some people on our end had. So those were just, once we found that out, they had categories named something different. Well, then it can't pass it there because it doesn't know that's where you want it to go, is the easiest way I know how to say it from a non-tech person. And then that one roster was the other issue that we saw. So I'm sure there's probably other things that might slip up, but those are some things you could check maybe with your honors classes if that's maybe what's happening, but it would be hard to know for sure.
And Heather just clarified as well that the Canvas has learned some things that they'll do better in supporting phase 2. And so I think that just goes to show exactly like you both have been saying that a lot of this is just communicating about what some of the issues have been. So people can start addressing them. I feel like that's a big thing, whether we're talking within the PSU or we're talking, to our SIS team or to the actual product. So that's what this is really all about, just some communication. I think the biggest lesson learned really is, don't be afraid to start exploring if you are in phase 1, right? And you can start asking those questions exactly like Erin and Ashley have said. If there's reports that you are missing, this is a good time to start documenting. And I was thinking about that too, Erin, where you were saying like that's a great tip ahead of implementation. So if you're waiting for phase 2 or beyond. However, if you are in phase 1 and you're not getting those reports, now the emergency of back to school has ended, hopefully, and so if you've been missing some of those reports, this is a good time to start documenting it and saying, I've had to try to figure out or hack my way to get birthdays, and here I finally learned how to do it, but I also need this report on blah, blah, and this is a good time to start asking those questions if you're in phase 1, because like Erin has kind of explained, some of that, here are the things we have to have in place in order to start the school year. And now that those things are in place and running, we can get into kind of the next level. So instead of, sitting back and being frustrated, I can do that sometimes. And I know that I did this, especially with when I was in my library. I'd be like, I don't even want to ask because it doesn't feel like something that I'm supposed to have access to, right? If I don't have access, I'm not supposed to have access, and I would write it off. But that's not really the way to do it, and this is a great time in being introduced to this new platform to ask those questions. And I think you both alluded to that, just to say, hey, I used to have access to, or I've never had, but can I maybe be able to have access to, and if not, why? And I think that's fair. It's fair to ask those questions.
And you may, one of the messages we sent out to our district and we continue to send out is, if there's something that you don't have access to, like, you have to let us know. But it may take us some time to figure it out. There are 4 levels of access for every single thing in Infinite Campus. You can have read rights, you can have write rights, you can have add rights, and you can have delete rights. Except in our district, we give no one delete rights because we're afraid someone will delete the wrong thing. So we only give those first 3. But there's about 7,000 different things we can give you rights to. And so if you miss one check, I've had many people who, I just missed a checkbox for their group, right? So we did make, and when you're implementing in your districts, they'll do this. They had us make certain user groups, right? And so we assigned rights to the group. So if one guidance counselor can't do something, none of them can, because they're all in the same group. So all we have to do is fix it for that group, and it fixes it for all of them. But there's a lot of check boxes, and the ability to overlook one is pretty easy. And the only way that they know is if you tell them, because I definitely have had to dig a little bit and find what box did I miss, or just a right I didn't realize they needed. Like, I know where it is, I know how to give it to them. I had no clue that that was something that they needed. And so, I've just said to them, like, just email me and let me know, because and some of the rights aren't the same. So I have people who will email me and they're like, I had administrative rights in PowerSchool. There is no such thing as administrative rights in Infinite Campus. What is it you can't do, so that I can go make it possible for you to do it? So just sort of know that, like, there's some lingo change there and how it's working. I think it's a nice thing that you can go through all those different rights and give people different levels of access, and it can be, pretty granular, but it definitely takes some getting used to.
That's a really good point. And it's one of those things I can tell you've seen it. I think you don't know. And I'm thinking of, once I started seeing like a district view of Destiny, for example, and what you're talking about with checkboxes, it was like, oh, that's not even an option. I didn't even know that was an option. But until you see it, you kind of don't know. So it's back to that, have those conversations with the people who are checking the boxes in your district. And that's a really great, kind of reminder that sometimes it's new lingo. Sometimes you didn't even know that was a possibility. So Pam has a question, and I think Heather might be addressing it, but Erin, do you have any insight on that as well?
Has anyone found an easy way? Like for a report, or just to like quickly know how many kids are enrolled at the school on any given day? I guess I'm not quite sure what she's looking for. A quick count. So Pam, I don't know what kind of rates you have, but if you have unfiltered search, which is the name of the tool to allow you to see more than just your students, right? You have to have unfiltered search to be able to see all students. If you have that right, what I've told people to do is go to the school that you need, change it up in the upper right-hand corner to whichever school it is, and go to the search for students, and don't put a student in, just hit the little magnifying glass to search, and it will show you the first 20 of however many kids are enrolled in the school on that day.
Yeah, somebody had given me that idea. I was looking for a quick enrollment counts when I was working with our collection development allotments to distribute to the schools, but we have 86 schools. So going to each school, doing the blank search, getting that number was just very tedious and time consuming. So I was wondering if there was a way to run here's your district enrollment report.
Yeah, you should be able, your SIS coordinator should be able to run an enrollment report that's broken down by school. Oh, it tops out at 1,000.
All right.
What?
I appreciate it.
Oh, that's so interesting. Thank you, Amanda. So people watching the recording, Amanda said it tops out at 1,000. So what Amanda did was narrowing it down by grade level in order to figure out that enrollment.
So ours does not top out at 1,000. So I'm not sure cross-listed students who are online. Yeah, so that's a great point that Amanda, when she said cross-listed students and online students, we definitely have had to go finesse some of our reports that we thought, oh yeah, we've got this report, it's great, it's going to be easy, we can pull the data. And then we realized, oh, actually, we need to tell it not to include the NCDPI school. Oh, we need to tell it not to include, like, once we would look at the report, we would see we needed to fine tune a little bit. But yeah, I don't know what the topping out of 1,000 is. In Infinite Campus, I can see all 7,000 and something.
Amanda just might have learned something new about Infinite Campus that she has set. I'm glad that this is being discussed. hopefully, Amanda, we get yours figured out. All right. If there's any other questions, go ahead and let us know. And yes, now Amanda knows she's got to get somebody to check a box, flip a button for her.
Amanda, can you see all kids in your school or in your schools? Like, do you have unfiltered search? Because I think that might be district. Yeah, you have unfiltered search? Wow.
All right, we need to follow up with Miss Amanda.
Yeah, absolutely. Something seems amiss there. It's probably about.
See, this is why we have these conversations. Things to learn. We're gonna get there, Amanda. All right. Any other questions that we want to discuss? Will we have Ashley, Aaron, and Heather's brilliance here? You can use the chat. You can unmute. You're not gonna. It's okay to be shy if you would like to be shy, but
I'll speak up
Pam?
for Jenny. She had said that you all had mentioned a document that you were referring to that she said sounded very useful. But do we have a link to the document? Because the link in the chat goes to the NC SIS site, but was there something else?
Yes. I'll share a short link with you again. Yeah, of course. And it will, we will keep this just as it is so that it's something that, if you're, catch the recording later, I will link this with that as well. So it's kind of in one place. But this is a lot of the questions that were pre-asked before the meeting. When people registered, and then Ashley and Aaron responded to a lot of those questions. So there's a lot of things that are on there, including some cheat sheets and some videos that walk you through some of these. So the short link that's in the chat is what will get you there. Any other questions? Well, if things come up, please do let us know. We would like to, continue this conversation as it affects library media specifically. If there's any other issues that come up as we have learned and spoken about a lot here, please just communicate them, whether it's with your SIS coordinator, whether it's with our SIS PL team, or if it's something specific with libraries and you want to communicate it to me. I will get it to the right people as well. And if you have an idea for continuation of this, please reach out and let us know, and we'll make sure to get it to happen. And in the meantime, we'll post this recording, make it available for people if you know people who might want to listen, and or if you missed part of it and want to capture it, we will get this posted in a couple different places to make it easy to find. But Aaron, Ashley, I cannot thank you enough. I have learned a lot. And it sounds like people who are here in phase 2 especially were probably just really curious and really grateful to just kind of be assured that things are going to work, things are going to be okay. And per usual, we're going to figure things out as we go. So a big shout out.
Right. So we share what we know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of my colleagues said, you're gonna share what we've learned. No, those in phase 2 have to suffer like we did. I'm like, no. That's not how this works. So yeah, sure. As we figure things out, we're happy to share what we figured out.
Exactly. Just like Jen Berger said, that thank you for making it easier for phase 2. So it's very generous of you, but also just to have that mindset of being willing to share and pass things forward. And Ashley did an amazing job of creating some really helpful tutorials too. So there's some love for you, Ashley, as well. She's very worried they're not all cutesy, but I was like, people don't want cutesy. They just want the facts. They just show me how to do it.
They were slammed together between eating my celery and promoting the book fair. So you should all know that you may hear some squalling in the background, but you'll get the information you need. So, but just let us know what else you guys do need, and like everybody has, we're really willing to help do it. And your questions, especially phase 2 people, give us practice to go see if we can figure it out, and to see, you know, do I have access because I have less access than someone like Erin has? Okay, no, then can Erin make that kind of report and send it out to her SLMCs? Because that's what our implementation team has done, and that's been really, really helpful to be able to just pull up a quick report that they've already made using all the filtering, but then also having access to find the different stuff. So just reach out and let us know.
That sounds like the biggest takeaway is if you're phase 2 and you're waiting all of this excitement, start thinking about what reports you need. That's a great thing to be doing right now. And, you know, while you're anxious, I know how I get, like, I'd be very anxious for like, but what is this? Is it going to how to work? So right now I would be thinking about, you know, what am I going to put on that list to be able to communicate? So thank you both so much for taking the time to do this. Thank you all of you who logged in to listen. And really, truly, we mean it when we say reach out, let us know. Open channels of communication for sure. We have people we can tap into, like Ashley and Erin, but we need to know what you need. So thank you very much for taking the time to be here. I cannot tell you how grateful I am, Ashley and Erin, for leading the way. Thank you very much.
Happy to do it.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to stop the recording, and if you want to hang out, we're not recording anymore, so you'll be able to.
So now we're